I need to. Okay, so I'm going to start off with kind of a gray background here. We've got kind of a gray, cloudy sky in this painting. So I'm going to take my big brush out. I'm going to dry it off. Whenever you mix paint, you want to mix it again on a paper plate or something like that. For our gray background, I'm going to mix about 3 scoops of white. So I'm going to pick up 3 big scoops of white. Now, when I say big scoops, check this out. You want to do a good bit of paint, okay? So I'm going to pick up 3 big scoops of white, put it on my paper plate here. 3 big scoops of white, and then a teeny tiny little scoop of black. Now, when I see a teeny tiny scoop, let me show you here. If you dip just the corner of your brush like this into the black paint, that is plenty of black paint, okay? So you're going to use 3 big scoops of white paint, and then you're going to dip the corner of your big brush into the black paint like this. You don't have too much on there. And we're going to mix those colors together to make gray. Now, if your color is a little darker than mine and you want it lighter, just mix it again. It's a lot easier to mix it again than it is to go back and try to lighten up a really dark gray. And just so you know, you have got plenty of paint. We always include lots of extra paint in there. So if you need to mix the color again, you can. If your sky, if you want it to be darker than mine, a darker gray, you can make it so it's dusk and you can have some little stars in the background if you want. So after I mix my 3 scoops of white and 1 little tiny scoop of black, I'm going to start painting my background. So I'm going to do nice, long, soft paint strokes on my background here. People have a tendency to, do short, choppy strokes. On something like a background, though, I like to do long, soft paint strokes here. Make sure you go all the way up to your truck. Don't worry if you run into your truck like I'm doing here. I'm doing that because I know it is not going to matter later on. I'm a real messy painter just because I know later on we're going to cover that up so it doesn't matter. So again, nice, long, soft paint strokes here. I don't know if you can see this, but I've got a little bit of red in my sky. That is because the last painting I did had a lot of red in it and I was really bad and I didn't go rinse my brushes after that. So that is why I've got a little bit of red in my sky there. If you need to switch, or if you wanted to switch to that smaller flat brush to get into some of these smaller areas, you could. If you'll notice, I have run all into my truck. I don't care because I know that later on that's going to be covered up anyway. People tend to regard the pencil marks as sacred and they're afraid to run into them. But let me just tell you, you're going to cover those pencil marks up later on anyway. So you do not need to worry if you run into them. Again, I'm a real messy painter and I also have a bigger brush than you do. The big brush size that you have is a lot safer size for you, so you don't have to worry about running into stuff as much as I'm doing here. But just know if you do run into your pencil marks, not a big deal, especially around that tree. We are actually later on not going to be confined by those pencil marks anyway. We're going to go outside those pencil marks some. When we start painting our tree later, we want the pencil marks we want the branches of our tree later to kind of go on the outside of those pencil marks so that it looks, like it's going on to the background. So nice, long, soft paint strokes work best. You don't need to do those short, little choppy strokes. Make sure you do the little area underneath your truck as well. And also do the sides. Anything that goes to the edge of your canvas, wrap it around the side, okay? So again, anything that goes to the edge of your canvas, wrap it around the side. That just helps later on when you hang it up, it just helps it to look a little more finished, okay? So anything goes to the edge of the canvas, just take that right around the side. So I want you to take out your medium brush. And that is the smaller of your two flat brushes. And also take out your small brush, okay? So take out the medium brush and your small brush. We're going to use both of those little guys right now. So the medium brush is going to be to add our red in. The small brush is going to be to add small amounts of black in. And when I say small amounts, just a really, really tiny amount of black at a time here, okay? So the black is basically going to go on the pencil marks here. Mine's done in Sharpie, again, just so you can see it better. Yours is done in pencil, which it needs to be because you want to be able to cover it really easily, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to add tiny bits of black as we're painting the red here. And it's basically going to go with the shape of these lines. Now, that does not mean you have to start here and put black all the way around these lines. Just go generally with the shape of the lines, just so that we can kind of figure out where the different sections of our truck are, okay? So the door, for instance, we'll put like a little bit of black here later on, a little bit of black there, a little bit of black here, a little bit of black here, and that's going to help us know later on where those lines for our door are, okay? So I'm going to take my medium brush. Now make sure you dry that medium brush off really well because red is a very, very thin color. Because of that, this is going to be really streaky. Now, no matter what you do, this is going to be streaky, so don't fight it. You don't want to go over and over and over this trying to de-streakify it. That's a new word. You don't want to keep going over and over this trying to get rid of those streaks, because if you do, you're literally going to start to pull paint off your canvas, okay? So I'm going to take my medium brush, I'm going to dry it off really well, and let's just start on this section right here, okay? Look how thin this paint is, okay? This is like crazy thin. I'm not going to worry about that though, because I know we're going to do a second coat later. Don't worry if you run into the tire or anything. So I'm just doing this little section right here. Don't do that just yet. I want you to watch for a second. So I've done that little section here. While that section is still wet, I don't want to let that section dry. If I do, the blending that I'm about to do is not going to happen, okay? You can't blend into dry paint. So when you're doing a little section like this and you want to put some blending in, we're going to add some black in here to blend. You got to do that before your paint dries, okay? So what I'm going to do is take my small brush, I'm going to dip it in black paint, and look, I am not putting much on this at all, just a tiny little bit of that black, and then I'm going to switch back to my medium brush and blend, okay? So again, I'm switching back to that medium brush, I'm blending. Look how streaky that is. And you see all those stop and start marks, not going to matter later on because we're going to come back in and do another coat of red, okay? I'm going to show you one more section, okay, just so you really get this. So I'll just do the door section, okay? So I'm going to paint it red with my medium brush. And don't worry if you've got a lines, it's fine. So I'm going to paint this little door red with my medium brush. And while that's still wet, I'm going to put just a little black here and there. Notice I'm not putting very much, just a little bit there. Okay, you can actually put less than that. I put a little more just so you can see it better. And then I'm going to take my medium brush and come in here and really, really softly kind of blend that in. Notice it's gotten really, really dark. That's totally fine. When we come back and do that second coat of red, we're going to be able to see a little bit of that black shadow underneath. We're going to have some depth and it's going to be awesome, okay? All right, so you can start working on the little sections here. If you need to watch me do another section, you can. I'm just going to do this little quick section right here. And again, don't worry if you're out of line, some like in here. You don't need to put the black everywhere. Remember, just do it in just a little section here and there. Basically just enough so that when you blend it in like this, you're going to be able to tell where that little section is, okay? And I'm getting a really crazy, weird color right here. It does not matter a bit. When we come back in later on and do our next coat, it'll be fine, all right? Okay, so let's just work on our red here. Again, the red or the black we're adding in. You don't need to add it everywhere. We're adding it just enough so that we can kind of tell where the different sections of the truck are. Take your time on this. And don't worry about those streaks. Listen, they drive me crazy too. I hate these streaks in here. They drive me nuts. I think we all feel the same way about these streaks, but just know we will cover them up later. Also know the most important part of your painting is going to be the outlining later on. So don't worry a whole lot right now about, trying about any of your sections running into each other. When we do that outlining later on, we're totally going to take care of that. But like I said, all we're doing now is trying to separate those little sections out of our truck. Don't worry if you run into your tires like I'm doing, your headlight. Do that nice coat of red. And again, it's kind of a hideous color right now. Looks like our truck really needs to be painted. But we are going to take care of all of that in just a few minutes. All right, now is a good time to pause so that you can work on your truck for a few minutes. When you're done with the truck, we're going to move on in just a few minutes and do our a few black areas. And then we're going to take a break long enough to rinse our brushes and get clean water. Okay, sections now. Just so you know, this railing right here is going to be black later on. We're not going to paint that right now, though, because if we do, we're going to have to dodge it later when we're painting our tree. So we're not going to worry about that right now, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to paint the window black. We're going to paint our tires black. And we're going to paint the road black. Now, the tires and the road are obviously both black. They're going to run into each other. That's totally fine. If you look at the original, you'll see can't really see a line where the tires end and the road begins. That's totally fine. This is snow down here. You got a little snow drift there. You're going to have a little snow on the other side of the road too. We'll add that in later, okay? All right, so I'm going to use my medium brush and I'm going to paint this little area right in here, my window, black. Don't worry if later on when you do your red, you run into the black some. You are going to, I can promise you, you will. We'll have to clean that black up later on, but don't worry about that. We are not going to worry about that right now. When you're doing the tire, whenever you're doing something that's round, people always think if you go really, really super crazy slow, it's easier. Look, the opposite is true because everybody has kind of a natural shake to their hand. And if you go really, really slow with something that's round, it's actually a lot harder to do, okay? So what I'm gonna do when I do my tires is, look, I'll start there. I'm holding my brush like a pen or a pencil like this, and I'm gonna come in and just go pretty fast with it like this, and it's gonna be a lot easier for me, okay? Now, I'm a really fast painter. Don't feel like you have to keep up with me. People always get nervous because they think I'm going too fast, especially on something like this, where it's a video. You're able to pause it whenever you need to, so do not worry about that at all. I'm a fast painter. I try to do a bunch of these videos in one day once I sit down and start doing them. So I just kind of speed through them, and then you guys can pause whenever you need to. That is the beauty of videos. I'm also going to paint my bumper black. I'm going to use my small brush, but again, if you hold your brush like a pen or a pencil and just kind of brace your hand on your canvas or the table, whatever it is you're painting on, you can get a lot better line. So just brace your hand, and again, just use it like a pen or a pencil. If you ever forget to dry your brushes off, you will know right away because you'll be able to see the water in your paint. If that happens, no worries. Just wipe your brush off and then kind of wipe the canvas off with a paper towel or something, or towel, wherever it is that you might have let that happen. That happens to me sometimes too. Even after 10 years of doing this every day, I still do that sometimes as well. So don't worry if you run into a situation where you've got a little bit of white showing through or whatever. And by the way, also don't worry about these little hubcaps. You are going to come back in later on and go back over those. So don't worry if you've run into the black like I have, or excuse me, run into the white like I have. You'll totally cover up that later on. You don't need to worry about that in the least. All right, so take your time on that. When you're done with the black, I want you to go rinse your brushes and get clean water, okay? You will need to rinse your brushes and get clean water before we start again, because we want to make sure that we don't have, we don't want to get that black paint in our other colors in a few minutes, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is work on our snow drift here that's behind the truck and on our tree, okay? We want to make sure our paint is dry before we do these two things. So make sure your red paint is dry here. Make sure your black paint is dry around there. If it's not, wait a few extra minutes. I know I said before to take 10 minutes. If you need a few extra minutes, that's totally fine. I would rather you take a few extra minutes than end up with your paint all running together, okay? So if you need to take a few extra minutes, do so. But if not, we're gonna do our little snow drift area right back in here. And then we're also going to do our snow drift down here, and we're gonna work on the tree, okay? I like to do the snow drift over here with my finger because I like for it to be a little less perfect. You don't have to use your finger if you don't want to. You can absolutely use your brush. It's up to you. I'm going to have my snow go a little bit behind my truck here. So I'm going to run into that right now, but I'm not going to worry about that later on. I'll fix it. But let me just show you. If you use your finger, you can just put a little white paint on your finger like this. My hands are so dirty. And come in like this and just do like a little snow drift like so. Okay? And that way it's not really perfect. So this is basically just the snow drift on the other side, okay? Notice how because I'm using my finger, I'm able to make it kind of disappear here. So it's not really, really perfect, okay? Again, I'm just using my finger here. I'm not worried that I'm running into my truck. You can even have a little bit of that snow kind of come on top of the road in some places like this. You can have a little bit of that snow go on top of the road. Don't worry if you run into your tire. Remember, I said earlier, we're going to have to come back in and fix almost everything that's black. We'll have to come back in and go back over it again just because I always run into it. I'm running into my tire there. It's fine. So I'm going to come over. And again, this is just the snow drift on the other side, but I do want to put little bit of that on my road like so. Now, like I said, you don't have to do this with your finger. You can totally use your brush. If you do decide to use your brush, just use your medium brush. That'll be fine. You can also use the medium brush on the snow down here if you want, or you can use your big brush, whichever one you feel most comfortable with. So again, when you do the snow down here, you can use your medium brush or your big brush. Either one is fine. I wouldn't use my finger to do this whole area down here. It would take you forever. So you don't have to use your finger on that. I would use a brush on that area. It's just this part right here. Again, I really like it. I think it looks a lot more random and not as planned when you do it with your finger, okay? And I'm going to come right down in here and paint this white. I know it's already white, but the white paint on the canvas is a lot shinier than the white canvas itself. So you always want to make sure, even if you're leaving something white, make sure you paint it. Paint this little section down here. Somehow I still have red in my brush, so I'm ending up with pink snow here. I've painted quite a few paintings, done quite a few videos today, and I think everything I have done has had red paint in it, and so I keep getting red paint everywhere. So I'm painting my snow, and I'm painting my my little, my snow drift down here. It's on the side of the road over here, and then my snow over here is on the opposite side of the road. So feel free to pause now so that you can finish your snow. Again, just feel free to pause You can finish that snow up. Take your time on it. We are going to mix white, yellow, and green. Okay, so again, we're going to mix white, yellow, and green. Equal amounts is fine. Just pick up a couple scoops of white, couple scoops of yellow, couple scoops of green. So white, yellow, and green, pretty equal amounts is fine. When you mix this color together, it's actually best if you don't mix it completely together. So just mix it 3 or 4 times, and if you can still see a little bit of yellow, still see a little bit of white, still see a little bit of green, that is perfect, okay? So don't feel like you need to mix that completely together because you don't. So once again, medium brush, we're gonna mix a couple of scoops of white, couple of scoops of green, couple of scoops of yellow. Don't mix and mix and mix, just mix just enough to kind of marry those colors together. And then I want you to rinse that medium brush and dry it. And the reason I'm having you do that is because I don't want you to have too much paint on the brush, okay? If you have too much paint on that medium brush, it's just really hard to paint with, okay? So I do want you to rinse that brush and dry it after you mix those colors. We're going to use our medium brush here. We're not going to use the big side of it like this. We're going to use the small side like this, okay? So again, we're not going to use the big side like that. We're going to use the small side like this. So we're going to start right up here, and we're going to work our way out and down. Just pretend like, okay, there's an imaginary line that goes down the center of your canvas, okay? Or not the center of your canvas, the center of your tree. If it makes it easier for you, you could actually take that for an imaginary line and make an actual line. Take your small brush and just do a little line down the center like this. Not a real perfect line, just a quick line down the center of your tree, just so you can kind of, again, it's an imaginary line, but if you want to do a line there, you can. So we're going to go on both sides of this. We're going to kind of brush down and out, down and out, down and out. And as you get towards the middle, you can start brushing just straight down, okay? That's how we're going to build our tree. So I'm going to pick up some of my green, white, and yellow mixture. I'm going to start right up at the top here. Now watch, down and out, down and out. Notice how I'm just doing this really, really softly. So look at the effect I'm getting on that tree. So I'm just going real soft with it. Just watch for a second. I'll do the same thing over here, down and out, down and out. Don't worry if you run into your tree a little bit, it's fine. And by the way, don't worry if you run into this little area here. That's why I didn't have you do it earlier, because it would be too hard to kind of go around that. So once I get to the center though, I can start kind of going straight like this. And that way my branches look a little more realistic, okay? So again, I went out this way like this, out like this, out on the other side like that. And then towards the center, I went a little straighter with it, okay? While that is still wet, in just a minute, we're gonna do a little bit of blending. Remember earlier when we did our blending with the red and black, you gotta do that while it's still wet. So I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to kind of play around with that. And then we're going to, before that paint has a chance to dry, we're gonna do a little blending in there. Just as a general rule of thumb, any color you use to make another color is a safe color to blend into it, okay? So again, any color you use to make another color is a safe color to blend into it. So I mixed white, yellow, and green to make this color. So all 3 of those colors are safe colors to blend into it. When we blend on this tree, we want to make sure we blend with the shape of the tree. So with the strokes that we just did earlier. Now mine's going to dry out in a minute. It's probably already starting to dry out. So I'm going to stop you real quick here so you can see how this is going to work. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white, not much. Pick up some white in that medium brush and then dab it off on your paper plate so you don't have too much. So look, I don't need to put much of that in there. Take a look. I'm not putting much of that white at all, okay? But I'm doing this while this paint is still wet. And then I'm going to blend a teeny tiny bit of the green, just straight green in. And once again, I dabbed it off a little bit so I didn't have too much. So I did a little bit of white, a little bit of just straight green. And now I'm going to come back in and do some of that original white, yellow, and green mixture we made. And now look, I've got different colors going on there, so it's a lot more interesting. So I did a little white, and then I did a little bit of green, and then I did the white, yellow, and green mixture again. That gives it some depth and makes it more interesting. You could also blend some yellow in there because remember, any color you use to mix a color is a safe color to blend into it. Now don't blend it to death like I'm doing here. I have the hardest time knowing when to say when I'm blending, okay? I love blending. In fact, make sure you follow our YouTube channel. I'm actually about to release a series of just tutorials, and one of them is just on blending, just because I love blending. But, you know, if you want to learn how to blend water, for instance, so if you're doing the ocean, or how to blend a sunset or something like that, those are videos that we're going to be adding really soon to our YouTube channel. So make sure you follow or subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, so take your time on that tree. Go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to show you one more time kind of how those strokes go. They go out like this. And then in the center, you know, they start coming down a little straighter in the center, okay? It's hard to see my blending on mine because of the lighting there. So I'm going to go back in here real quick just so you can see it a little better. We're also going to be adding some snow to this later on. So we're going to have some little snow on our branches later on. So just know that that's coming up. All right, there we go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is add a second coat of red. Now, red, remember, is a really, really thin color. That deep red color we did earlier was just a base coat. This second coat of red is going to be a really light coat. We're going to barely touch our canvas when we're doing this. Make sure that medium brush is really, really dry before we start, okay? So take that medium brush out, rinse it off, dry it off. And we're going to do a really, really soft coat of red. Make sure that brush is dry. I know I keep saying that, but if we get any water into that red paint, it makes it even thinner, okay? All right, so I'm going to pick up some red on my medium brush and take a look right here. If I just go back in, don't worry if you run into the tire there. If I just go back in really, really softly right here and add a little red to that, look what a big difference that makes. Look at this section, for instance, versus that section. Huge difference, right? Now I can still see the black around here. So I can still see kind of where my lines are. I'm just doing a really, really soft coat of red everywhere that I did my red before. Just a really, really soft coat here. Like I said, what that's going to do. And by the way, you may need 2 coats in some places. Like on my door, I got really, really dark with that door. So I might need 2 coats on that. I'm going to keep going and do the rest of my truck. And then if I still feel like in a few minutes that I need another coat, I'll just go back in and add another coat. But I got to let this coat dry first. So I might as well just keep working. Get really soft, barely touch that canvas. Don't worry if you run into your tire, into either of those tires. You're going to probably. I always run into those little tires. Really, really soft though. Barely touch your canvas. Like you're petting a kitten. But now, I'm not sure if you can see under the lighting. It's pretty crappy when you're trying to look at shading like this. But that just gives me a little bit of depth. It gives me a little shading there. I'm able to see where different sections where this section ends and that section begins, for instance, on my truck. Now, if you need to in any areas, you can always go back in and add a tiny bit of black. Like for instance, right here, if I need, oh, that's way too much black. But if I needed to add a little more black, I could do that with my small brush and then come back in like this with my medium brush and blend. I'll need to go back over that again. I went real heavy with that one. But again, if you ever need to go back in over a section, you can. Just real soft, barely touch that canvas. Don't worry about running into the window or the tires. Remember I said earlier, most of that black, you'll have to come back and touch up at some point just because I always run into the black there. Into my tires, into my window, just always happens like that for me. I'm not a super careful painter just because I know that everything all comes together in the end. Outlining is the most important part of your painting. So later on, when we do our outlining, that is where everything starts to come together. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is clean up some of this black, okay? So right in here, for instance, you know, I ran into my black some with my snow earlier. I ran into it some with my red. I ran into my window some here. I'm going to use my small brush to touch those areas up. I'm going to hold my brush like a pen or a pencil. You get more control when you're doing that. So again, I'm going to hold my brush at the bottom like I would a pen or a pencil like this. And I'm going to paint this little area right here too. Don't worry if these are perfectly straight. They don't need to be. We're going to actually have some snow on these little rails later. So that's really going to help hide any issues we might have with the lines. But if you hold your brush like a pen or a pencil, it does really give you more control, okay? So I'm gonna do the little rails there. I'm also gonna touch up anywhere I need to right here with the black. And then I want you to rinse your brushes again, okay? So I want you to go rinse those brushes, get clean water one more time. And we're gonna need to let this dry for about 5 minutes before we start coming in and adding our hubcaps, our light, and also the snow on our tree. If everything has had a chance to dry, we're going to go ahead and mix a light gray color to do our hubcaps here and also our headlight. Okay, so take your medium brush, take that medium brush out. Remember, the medium brush is the smaller of the two flat brushes. Take that brush out. Let's pick up a nice big scoop of white. And then a scoop of black that's not quite as big as the scoop of white, about a third the size. Mix those colors together. And we'll put that medium brush back into the water. So again, mix a nice big scoop of white, little scoop of black. Put your medium brush back into the water. We're going to use our small brush to paint the headlight, and we're going to use our fingers to paint the hubcaps, okay? So we're going to use our small brush to paint the headlight and our fingers to paint the hubcaps. When you paint the hubcaps, I like to blend a little white into my hubcaps so they're not just a straight gray color. So I'm going to take my finger. I'm just going to go round and round and round here. Easiest way in the world to make a circle is with your finger, okay? And that is why I always use my finger on things like hubcaps, okay? So go round and round and round like this. Don't worry if you kind of go out of the line a little bit like this. This is a painting that just adds to it. So I'm going to use my finger, just go round and round and round there. While the gray is still wet, I'm going to add a little white to it like this to give it some texture. Use that small brush. I'm going to hold it like a pen or a pencil. And I'm going to blend some white into it as well. It's going to look a lot like the background. Don't worry about that. We're going to take care of that later. So for the hubcaps and for the headlight, we're blending white into both of those. Only difference is we're blending the white into our hubcaps with our finger, and we're blending the white into our headlight with our small brush, okay? So we painted the headlight with the small brush, that white and black color that we mixed together to make gray. So I'm going to take my small brush. Remember, that's the one that's a little pointier on the end. I'm going to take my small brush, pick up a little bit of black paint, not very much. And by the way, your brush, if it breaks up or if the stroke breaks up like your ink pen's running out of ink, that's perfect, okay? So take a look right here. I'm just going to come in. Basically, I'm just going with the shape of my tree. Notice I am not trying to trace anything. I am inside the line in some places, outside the line in some places. Look how haphazard that outlining is, okay? We're just doing just enough to get some definition there. So really super haphazard on that outlining. Now we are going to add some snow on that tree later, so it's not going to look like that when we're done, but I do want you to outline it a little bit and just kind of get an idea of what haphazard outlining looks like. Notice right here, I'm not even on the outside of the line there. Just go with the shape of whatever it is you're outlining, which in this case is a tree. Okay, so for my outlining on my truck, I'm going to come in and I'm holding my brush like a pen or a pencil. I'm just going to do just some basic little highlights here, or not highlights, but outlining here. Notice I am not worried about being exactly on the line here. And if you hold that brush, again, like a pen or a pencil, it's a lot easier to stick close to those lines. I'm just going to do just enough outlining to give me some definition. A lot of times people on something like this will lay the canvas flat and kind of brace their hand against it. If you want to do that, that's totally fine. You do get a little more control that way, but keep in mind, you don't need to do perfect outlining here, okay? So again, I'm using my small brush, like a pen or a pencil. Don't need to go real slow with this. We are going to highlight in a minute with some white. And that white, like I said before, is not meant, that white's not meant to cover up the black. It's just meant to highlight it a little bit, okay? If you brace your hand on the canvas, you do get a little extra support there. It does make it a little easier for you. Obviously, if you're going to brace your hand on the canvas, you want to make sure everything's dry underneath it, which it should be down here. I mean, your hubcap's probably still a little wet, but that's fine. I'm even going to do a little bit of outlining kind of around my headlight here. Maybe some little cross hatching on my headlight. When I highlight with that white, I'm only going to do a little tiny bit of white here and there. I'm not going to do a whole lot of white. Don't worry about highlighting the tree in white, simply because in a few minutes we're going to be adding some white snow to that anyway. So you don't really need to outline the tree in white or highlight the tree in white. If you're still working on the black outlining, it's totally fine, but take a look up here and let me show you something real quick. Remember I said earlier that the white could help to take your eye away if the black got too thick anywhere. So you can come in like this, just do like a little white here, a little white here. Look what a difference that makes on that really thick black outlining there, okay? And I can do a little here, kind of a little here. I like to do my white outlining around curves. So, you know, I might curve it there a little bit. I might do actually a little straight line there, a little straight line there. But the white is just a little highlight. We don't need to do a lot of the white. It's just a little highlight for us. Just helps to give a little extra definition to our little truck here. Can even do just a touch on the tires right here, just so you can kind of give yourself an idea that the tire kind of ends right here. So you can do a little touch on the tire if you want. But again, not too much. We don't want to do a lot of white on here. That's the biggest problem people make when they're outlining something like this that's really dark. They add too much white. And when I say people, I mean mostly myself. So I'm going to use that medium brush, pick up a little white here. I'm going to come in and just kind of do some snow like right in here, just where it would just naturally be, where those branches are there. You can do as much or as little as you want. And I'm just going to put some snow in here in a few places. Don't overdo it. And then I'll also put some of that snow kind of resting on top of my truck in some places. And I'll go ahead and put mine on just so you can kind of see where I'm putting it. Now, obviously, you can put your snow wherever you want, but I'm going to put like a little bit here, and I'm going to use my small brush, and look, I'm just kind of dabbing it on, okay? So I've just got a little bit of snow resting in a few places here on my truck, on the wheel well here in the front. I'll do some on the wheel well in the back. Just got some snow on top of my truck in some places. Again, I did the snow on my tree with my medium brush. I'm doing the snow on the truck with my small brush, just dabbing that on. Okay, so take your small brush. We're going to mix a nice big scoop of white and then a little tiny scoop of yellow. So a nice big scoop of white, little tiny scoop of yellow. So small brush, that's the pointy one. A nice big scoop of white, little scoop of yellow. Mix it together. And then take a look. I don't do this just yet, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to kind of come in and do a few little lines like that coming out from my headlight. And then I am going to softly rub it in like this so it's not so prominent. Okay. So again, I just did a few lights there. Just a few lines like this. And then I took my finger, don't do it as many times as I'm doing it here, but took my finger and just really softly rubbed that in so that it's not so prominent. Okay, so just really softly just rub that in. And then the last thing we need to do is snow in the background, in the sky. I like to do my snow with the handle of my brush. So that's how I'm going to do my snow. The reason I like to do that is because you get lots of different sizes of snow. Because as the paint on the end of your brush starts to wear off, you don't have as much on there, then your snowflakes get smaller. So I just like using my handle of the brush because it just naturally makes some of the snowflakes larger and some of them smaller. And again, that is the last thing for your painting. And here's how we're going to do that. Okay, I'm going to use the handle of my brush. Again, my hands are so dirty here with paint. I'm going to use the handle of my brush right here. And this is my big brush. I'm going to dip the handle of my brush in white paint like this. Okay, and then look, I'm going to come in. And as the paint starts to wear off and I don't have as much on there anymore, look at the tiny snowflakes I get. So this way I can get lots of different sizes of snowflakes, okay? And again, I'm using my big brush to do this, But now I'm getting some nice well-formed snowflakes. I'm getting some tiny little pieces of snowflakes. And that is exactly what I want. I don't want them to be really perfect here. Some of them are big, some of them are small, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. But again, just using the handle of my brush, just dabbing it on. You can use your medium brush if you want to, if you want the snowflakes to be smaller. Again, I just like to use my big brush because I like some bigger snowflakes there too. You can do as many or as few snowflakes as you want. When you're done, take a look at the sides of your canvas and just make sure that as you were painting, you took everything around the side. That way when you hang it up later on, it looks finished. You don't want to hang it up and have, you know, your sides not done. Again, you can do as much or as little snow in that background as you want to. But when you are done with your snow, you are done with your painting. And like I said, I encourage you to back up from it, squint, take a good look at it. If you squint, you could really tell more about what it's going to look like as a finished product, okay? Remember, when you just back up from it and look at it, you're just going to see anything you think you might have done wrong on it, or you know, any little issues you might have had when you were doing it. It's hard to see it as a finished product when you're just looking at it straight on. So that's why I like to squint or take a picture of it with my phone or something, and then I get a much better representation of what it looks like. I could do snow forever. I love just dotting snow on like this. Make sure you post a picture of your painting to our Facebook page, Sips and Strokes Sandy Springs. We do drawings for free paint kits, and it's just a random drawing. So if you want to post your painting to our Facebook page or our Instagram page, you can be entered to win. And I hope you have enjoyed painting with me today. I really enjoy doing these videos. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see more free videos. And like I said earlier, we'll be doing some little tutorial videos in the next week or so. I'm going to get those loaded where we do little subjects like how to blend a sunset, how to blend a water if you're making an ocean or something, or, like a surf coming up on the sand or something like that. So we are going to be adding those in the next week or so. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you joining us. And you're going to see something flash up in a minute with our website. So if you wanted to go and buy additional paint kits, or if you've just watched this and you didn't have a paint kit, just know that our paint kits come with everything you need for the painting. It comes with a sketch canvas, brushes, paint, and detailed step-by-step instructions. Some of the paintings have videos. They don't all have videos, but obviously this one does, and quite a few of the other ones do as well. Thank you guys so much, and happy painting.